Hello everyone, Harry Baldock here, editor at Total Telecom. It's been around 9 months now since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the response from the Ukrainian telecoms operators has been incredible, from helping millions of displaced people to keep in touch with friends and family, to engineers repairing infrastructure during an active war zone. So today I'm really delighted to be joined by Oleksandr Komarov, CEO of Kyivstar, to talk about the company's journey over the last year. Oleksandr, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Hi, everyone.
Firstly, congratulations on your win of the Crisis Response Award at the World Communication Awards earlier this year. How kind of important is that for you guys in terms of getting the industry acknowledgement from your peers like this for the work you've been doing?
No, I think it's important to have a kind of recognition. So I think this is actually recognition of the whole Ukrainian telecom. So we are not alone. Okay, and cooperation, local cooperation and international cooperation is probably among top factors how we were able, to achieve such level of redundancy and sustainability. So I think it's, so far, okay, so I think industry was able to cope with the current challenges in a very effective way.
And speaking of that, can you give us maybe an overview of Kyivstar's current situation in terms of how much, say, coverage has been affected? How much infrastructure has been damaged? How are things for you today towards the end of the year?
Right now, we have two major problems. The first one are sites located across occupied areas. Okay, so we do not have access to around 8% of our network because these areas are being occupied by Russians. Okay, and the second biggest problem, and this is relatively fresh, I will say, threat for us. Okay, it's absence of energy, electricity. So since the first massive airstrike attack in October. Okay, so we are facing a growing number of sites that are being affected because we are out of electricity. And these are two main factors that really affects our operation for the time being.
How does that affect your staff? How much of your workforce is maybe unable to work or have been displaced during the conflict?
So about displacement, let me start from the country displacement, and then you will understand Kyivstar or any kind of other big companies are just, I will say, fraction in this huge displacement. So since the beginning of the war, millions of people, literally more than 10 million of people in Ukraine were displaced. Okay, so the biggest share is actually internal displacement. So it's a migration from east and central part of Ukraine toward the western part of Ukraine, and this is around 8 million of Ukrainians. And the third, and around 3+ millions of people were actually forced to migrate outside of Ukraine. Part of them already returned in Ukraine. So what we see right now that at least from the Kyivstar perspective, around 1.6 million customers, I know from 3 million are actually outside of Ukraine right now. Okay, so this is a huge displacement, more or less the same trends across Kyivstar employees. Okay, we had up to a little bit less than 500 employees outside of Ukraine. So right now we have something like 300+. So this is our current situation. Majority of our employees were able to return to their homes, of course, except these occupied areas. Okay, but yes, it's a huge humanitarian hit and humanitarian crisis. And to keep company operational within such circumstances, it's a very big challenge. We were somehow prepared by COVID, of course. This hybrid mode is with us for the last few years. Okay, but so it's something slightly different, so it's I can say that I did not see few my direct subordinates for the last 9 months or so, ladies who are abroad.
And in terms of kind of the journey from when the invasion first started back in February to now, I mean, obviously you mentioned the energy crisis as of October is kind of a really new challenge for you guys. Yeah. What was kind of the first impact? What was the biggest challenge immediately after the invasion?
The first challenge was to organize company in the right way in order to react, in the right way to this threat. Okay, so we were somehow prepared. Okay, so we have this anti-crisis committee as a kind of governance mechanism already incorporated in our daily life. Okay, we did some preparations. Yes, somehow we did not start in time. So our first set of actions to prepare was actually in June 2021, but the main scenario that we have considered was related to the escalation in the east of Ukraine. Okay, so, and our main preparation was focused on our ability to manage our network. Okay, if this invasion will roll out into the territory of Ukraine, so this was very much based on our 2014 experience, okay, in Crimea and Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast regions. Okay, so this was actually our first approach. Somewhere in October, we realized that it might be different scenarios, and we start to prepare for different scenarios, including, let's say, a very, I will say, high-scale, massive invasion from different directions. This is actually what happened at the end. Okay, and we start to prepare in few different dimensions. The first dimension was people, how we can help people, during such type of humanitarian crisis. Okay, and there were a number of measures, for example, relocation loans. We rebuilt our offices into a kind of hostages, at least temporary hostages for our employees, in order to support their migration from east to west. Okay, so we allocated some funds, we paid some salaries in advance, just to ensure that our people have enough financial resources to help themselves, okay, to move if necessary and to support their families. Okay, so there were a number of measures in this area. The second focus was service continuity. So somehow we realized it was not even about business, it was service continuity. So we have chosen 3 primary services: voice, data, and SMS. Okay, and we did some steps in order to ensure that we will be able to provide these services. Okay, mainly related to the redundancy of our core sites. Okay, national core sites and core sites located on the eastern part of, actually close to the borders, according to the different scenarios. And it was extremely useful step, to be fair. Okay, so we were able to rehome majority of our risky core sites to the central or western part of Ukraine. Okay, and in this way to sustain communication in the regions that were occupied by Russians, as an example. Okay, because we were able to relocate all the switching facilities from their regions, and what we had is just a simple radio access network and some transit facilities, okay, that is significantly reduced network penetration risk from that area. Okay, so there were a lot of steps, to be very fair. Okay, the third priority was business continuity, and it was about billing redundancy, our ERP redundancy, so all these systems redundancy, customers' data redundancy, our data warehouse. So it was very much about business support systems redundancy, okay, or cloudification in a very short period of time. Okay, and the fourth priority that actually emerged since the beginning of the war was actually social support. So we realized that we are in charge not only actually to provide physical connection, communication, we are in charge to let people to use this within a very different circumstances. So literally for the few months, we have provided services for free. Okay, we are still providing services for free in these risky and battlefield areas. Okay, so customers can use our services without any top-up, without any service fee, without anything. Okay. One more direction is to support people outside from Ukraine, okay, through a very fruitful cooperation between European regulation, European operators, and Ukrainian operators. We were able to agree on interconnection rates that are actually lower than intra-European rate. Okay, and with a relatively low ARPU in Ukraine, we were able to introduce roaming like home services when Kyivstar customer can get exactly the same bundle in Poland, Spain, Portugal, like in Ukraine, for the same fee. which is actually right now it's around €3 per month. Okay, for around 12 gigabytes and hundreds of minutes. So it was. We start to support Ukraine because we realize that we are still sustainable business. We are generating some funds and we are able to help. Okay, as a simple step, we start to prepay all our taxes. So since the beginning of the war, Kyivstar paid around 200 million, different taxes and rent fees to the state budget. 1/3 of this amount was prepaid ahead of schedule. Okay, we start to support government, and this, as an example, our initiative to allocate 300 million hryvnia, around $10 million to the United 24 platform. Okay, for the Digital for Freedom initiative, okay, driven by our Ministry of Digital Transformation. Okay, we support different social institutions, some funds, so in some specific projects. So this was, from funds allocation, right now, it's almost equal to our, investments into the network recovery.
And in terms of your kind of relationship with the government during the planning phase, was that something they were always involved in, or is this something that you were doing individually or with the other operators? Kind of how much collaboration was there?
Planning is an individual. Okay, so at the same time, we have a number of platforms. First of all the operators, according to the martial law, partially integrated into the national security system. Yes, we are private business, but we are operating critical for the government infrastructure and providing critical for the Ukrainian services. And from this perspective, yes, we are partially integrated, and it is a kind of, and it's not just only kind of, a direct order system. It's also a system of collaboration between different institutions, state institutions and private institutions. As an example, for example, we have management information, MISP-UI. I don't remember how its exact stand for, but this is a kind of sharing platform built around different types of cyber threats. Okay, so and all the security offices from Ukraine, different services, and all the operators are integrated into the same platform in order to ensure cooperation, information exchange, knowledge sharing, so in a real-time format. This is one of the examples, okay? Very vivid example of our cooperation with our competitors is actually national roaming. So it's a very, very helpful tool. Okay, I don't know the latest figures because we were very much into this, electricity troubleshooting during the last days. But during the peak days, millions of people across Ukraine, were roaming as a guests in a different networks. So this was probably the biggest practical step to ensure this kind of service continuity across the whole country, despite difficulties.
And in terms of this this energy kind of challenge you've got on the plate now, how long do you see this lasting? What kind of impact is that potentially going to have on the network and on customers over the Christmas period?
It can have huge impact, really huge impact. So since 10th of October, we were under a few dramatic attacks. Okay, so the main targets of these attacks are generating and transmission facilities, okay, so of our energy market. Okay, and because of this, we have huge disbalances. And as a result of these disbalances, we have blackouts. And we should be fair, after every new attack, these blackouts are deeper and longer. Okay, so, and they are wider, to be very fair. Okay, so I can give you figures right now. So right now, Kyivstar has around 13,400 not base station sites, with 3-4 base stations per site. Okay, so right now, around 700 plus are located on the occupied areas, Okay, so and not under our control at all. Okay, and at the same time, right now, around 25% of the network is out of operations because of the electricity. And which means somehow that 30% of the country in a kind of temporary blackout. And this is already significantly improved situation, because on the latest attack was on 23rd. Yes, so on 24th, we had something like 50+% of our country without electricity. This is this is not about electricity. This is about water supply. This is about heating. So it's extremely strong humanitarian impact, where telco services is just part of the impact. And right now, it's the biggest challenge since the beginning of the war.
And in terms of getting past that challenge, I mean, obviously you mentioned yourself relying on generators. I'm assuming lots of your infrastructure is relying on that backup power as well. How long can that situation sustain itself?
We have few layers. Our core network is actually fully backed up with generators. So despite the fact that we lost partially our radio access network, our core network is fully operational. Okay, so this is first. Second, of course, it's impossible, technically impossible, to support for 100% the whole network. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to improve to some extent. Okay, so our main measures is accelerated extensive exchange of the batteries, because batteries is actually, this can help us at least for we are facing right now two types of the blackout. The crisis blackout, this is unpredictable, can last really for 24. The longest, my personal longest blackout was around 36 hours. Okay, so, but at the same time, when system is being a little bit normalized, we are facing a kind of regularly managed blackouts in order to stabilize the system. The regular managed blackouts normally last around 4 or 5 hours. Okay, and with updated batteries, we can actually sustain these 4 or 5 hours blackouts. Okay, and what we are trying to do is to accelerate batteries exchange program. Okay, so I hope that in the nearest future, we will be able to substitute up to 50% of our current batteries to the modern lithium-ion batteries, which are less affected by frequent switch off, switch on of the electricity. These lithium batteries need less time for recharge, and they can last relatively longer than IGM batteries. So this is the first measure. The second measure, we're increasing number of generators. So we are buying new generators, and we are collecting new field management teams to support these generators, because you don't need just a generator. The normal generator is actually 100+ kilo actually device. You need a couple of people, you need car, and each team, each unit will not be able to serve more than a couple of generators per time, because you need to supervise the generators, you need to refill the generators, you need to substitute generators, so it's and of course, if you need to do this 24 hours per day, it's literally impossible. So you need at least 2 units or 3 units per day per 2 generators, which is somehow impossible, to be very fair. So our main focus is to create a kind of minimum optimum grid, and to ensure that this minimum optimum grid will be supported in any circumstances. So this is our main focus right now. Also, we called for a kind of crowdsourcing project. So we are ready to connect to the third-party generators and compensate their expenses, okay, if they're able to generate for us. Of course, there are a lot of restrictions. First is consumption. Each site will consume at least 6 kilowatt per hour. So it's relatively big device, okay? And normally we do not have this spare energy capacity power, okay, on the specific gen. But what we are trying is to use every possible measure to improve overall network stability, okay, in face of these massive blackouts.
It really sounds like it's mostly about anticipation and reliability, and forcing the network into a more reliable state is quite a difficult thing when you don't have any resources available to you.
We are still financially stable, so we are reinvesting, and we are heavily reinvesting, okay, into the 3 dimensions. The first one is redundancy, network redundancy. The second one is recovery, because in parallel, we are restoring our network across recently deoccupied areas. Since the beginning of the war, almost 9 regions were affected, partially or fully occupied by Russia. Okay, it's a very positive progress since April this year. So right now, at least 5 regions were deoccupied or partially deoccupied. And we have to rebuild our network as soon as possible. And this is our second priority. And third priority, we need somehow to consider how to develop where we should invest right now in order to be even more sustainable in the future, not only as an operator, but also as a country, okay, which is facing so huge, I will say, existence threat. Okay, and we are building, even this year we will build 400 plus new sites. So actually 430 we built already. Okay, so, and these sites are mainly focused on, to support this huge displacement, creates absolutely new pattern of population distribution across Ukraine. And we have to react. So these are main priorities, of course, along with focus on our people, focus on our customers, and the social support that we can provide.
One last question for you, Oleksandr. In terms of the technologies that you're kind of relying on to do this, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of talk about Starlink's role in Ukraine and things like that. Where do you stand in terms of things like satellite, for example? How important has that been in your kind of journey so far, I guess?
Yes and no. Okay, so we are using Starlink for 2 main purposes. The first purpose is emergency communication for our core sites. So all our core sites equipped with Starlinks in order to ensure that we will be able to manage our network and operations within the different circumstances. So we have around 25 Starlinks dedicated to this kind of, contingency emergency network. And the second is actually temporary recovery of our sites, okay, on the deoccupied areas. Because we are facing there are 2 main reasons, okay, why our sites are out of operation. The first one is electricity, and I can give you an example. In a recently deoccupied Kherson area, from current 25 plus recovered sites, okay, 23 are being run on the generators. So literally no electricity. Okay, but the second biggest problem is actually transmission. And really, Starlink is very helpful to restore, so your transmission in a temporary way. Why temporary? Because capacity is not sufficient. So you can, quite quickly bring your mobile base station to the central part of Kherson, to the Freedom Square, okay, to start, let's say, provide services. But as soon as you have substantial number of people, okay, so you need to restore your fiber transmission, otherwise, it will literally will not work, okay. I probably have to admit and underline that this kind of cooperation, steps towards Kyivstar and other telco operators in Ukraine, is important part of our daily life. We got a lot of support, different types of support. Okay, so like, for example, grace periods for different licenses starting from Microsoft and Oracle. Okay, so some extra discounts, materials and equipment provided by our biggest vendors like Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei, and ZTE. So we feel that it actually joint efforts, okay, from these internationally recognized players to support Ukraine.
And I guess just before we go, what would you say your kind of hopes for the future are in the next? Where would you like to see Kyivstar in the next 6 months? Obviously, hopefully, with the energy crisis behind you.
Okay, I will be very happy in 6 months to finish our restoration program in Crimea, Donetsk, and Lugansk. So this is my dream.
Thank you very much, Oleksandr. It's been really great to speak to you, and good luck with everything in the new year.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you very much for the recognition. I think it's very important for the team because the main key success factors behind our current resilience is our people.